Hello, lovely people. Um, Lovely people and more. Um, yeah, I feel to do this transmission as we're in an interesting cycle in the Galactic Mayan calendar, where we're on the second phase of four wave spells of this galactic spin. And this might be confusing if you don't understand the Galactic Mayan calendar, but try and tune in and try and receive the transmission as it comes through. In essence, we have four cycles of 13 days, and each cycle has, every day's got its own vibration, but each 13-day cycle is under, it's a little bit like being in Virgo or being in Gemini. We have a 13-day energy as well, and we're currently in the Skywalker energy, and um, we're going to end on the human energy. And a lot of you be like, I don't know what that means. So I feel that, well, this has been coming to me for a while, which is, it's not mine, it's just observing what's in the field and what we're working on, and then there's personal research that I've been doing that's linking up to why I feel to make this little transmission. That we are presented at the moment with, in many ways, what our unconscious is projecting for us into the field of what we need to work with. So many people are going through their worst fears of having their body tampered with, losing their freedom, blah, blah, blah. And I've been looking at, I removed myself from countries that are more prone to slightly Eurocentric approaches, which are linked to kind of the US media and the European media, and and slightly colonial vantage points of looking at the world, because the coronavirus situation is very different if you sit in a different place. Okay, so I've been here in Mexico for a lot of the time, and and so it's interesting observing people's reaction dependent on what their dominant belief system is, and and there are lots of things, lots of discussions I'm not getting into. But I, for instance, talked to some people here about, oh, what's your slant on things like vaccinations, and they're like, never going to happen, because they had the swine flu here, which was made also in a laboratory, and it was something that they tried to impose vaccinations for, but nobody can afford them. So the thing is, for instance, so I'm just giving, I don't want a debate, but I'm just giving examples of how when we change the lens, things can be really different. So people here, they're like, well, we couldn't afford them last time, so the government just got rid of the whole thing. So they're just like, it's whatever. And in countries that have imposed healthcare, or free healthcare, it's more of a risk. But it can't be this global thing that people make out, because each country's already had experiences or got their own situation. So that's something to bear in mind, is how people are actually creating a hysteria by projecting. They read one thing. I see a lot of this from where I am, is I'll see something that gets taken out of context and loads of people just going on top of it, because everything that is absolutely from a generational inherited trauma about a loss of freedom just gets riled, and people are projecting in and creating something. And this is the first layer of what I want to speak of, is the need to zero point everything. And so I've made a couple of posts about this need to actually understand when we're reacting from a generational trauma. Sometimes it's not even ours, it's something that came down our family line or was conditioned into us where we grew up. And this sits in our DNA. And so a lot of this is needing to be zero pointed, because actually it creates these really inflammatory responses that actually create kickback. And actually it doesn't have to be that way. And that links into the story of sovereignty. And sovereignty is understanding that we're all a divine, unique being, all with our own free will, which is unique for each of us. So this thing of people pressing judgment onto each other, there are many ways of looking at things. Just as I've said, coronavirus or whatever, in one country, and it's reality, people start to say, oh, the planet is going to be like this. It's like, No, it's not quite like that. We can't homogenize everybody. That's the brain and the ego trying to make sense of something from its own limited perspective. And that's just something that we're working through. So these days that we're in are very, very interesting, because I've also been looking at, for people who are into it, there's the concept of having had past lives. And I find that quite a lot of the discussion on past lives can be quite tenuous. And obviously everybody's always Cleopatra and somebody cool, because it's not something that you can ever really prove. It's like an essence. And it's, for me, I came into this planet knowing that it was something that I don't have to think about all the time, and for whatever reason I either chose for it to be that way, or it didn't exist, or I'm broken and I can't do it, or whatever. And however, I have had some people give me past life readings and things. Sometimes they've just said, oh, something came through, and I can see it as quite viable. The thing is that we've inherited everything. We are everything in the non-linear time format. We are all experience, it's all a holograph, and therefore we can be many people in one. And there are some discussions about the fact that we need to realize that all those essences are coming into this timeline now to bring us to where we are now, and to bring us to an evolution. And I think that's where some people they're like, oh, I was this person and I did that over there. And actually it's just to understand that, yeah, that's part of my makeup. Okay. And therefore we have the assets of it, and also the teachings of that to bring through. And that makes us a richer person. So where we're really at in many ways is a time where, if we still have reactions to things that are from a historical or past life part of us, that can be impacting our ability to be a sovereign and to create our own free will and freedom, because we're still contracted or shackled by a historic situation that's sitting in our blueprint. And so these things sit in like consciousness. There are, some people would say, the layers of DNA. Some people call it the Akashic records. Some people might even say black holes hold it. It doesn't really matter, because the thing is that these thought forms that make us who we are, which is why we react to certain things in certain ways, are all here. And we're presently a mirror of what's being spewed at us, which is everything's fake news, truth, false, fiction, rah, and people are getting really, really caught up in it, and angry. And I read about things like, I used to study history at times, and we'd look at things like the Spanish Civil War, where families were pitted against each other due to the political leanings and what they felt they needed to defend, and it caused a huge trauma. And now we have that happening on Facebook every day, with people about and just this anger, and a lot of this is this generational or inherited trauma, or all these feelings that are coming through. And what's happening is we've got all these timelines of, okay, that's because I was bullied at school, or because my dad was a minor and there's this trauma from this thing coming through, or whatever. And these are all like, and people are reacting from more than what is the little event in front of them. Okay, and I'm not trying to say that the event we're in is not huge, but it's very interesting how people react to what sometimes is just one thing, and there's an explosion over one use of a wording, because there's more at play in somebody's field, because they feel contracted or aggravated or triggered or whatever, right? So we have the opportunity to zero point ourselves by deciding that we're no longer in conflict with these different beings that we are, because we are our ancestors, we are our past lives, and we stay fragmented and create a fragmented mirror if we continue to be non-reconciled with the serial killer that we were in 1621 or whatever. Yeah. And the thing is that when we have acknowledgement that, we come out of some times that were really heavy, where people had less, the way the astrology made it and the time in terms of our evolution made it, many people say, I can tell you more about this if you ask, it meant that a lot of horrible things happened, and we have horrible things in our DNA, and therefore we are it too. Okay, but there's no point in being polarized against it. We are here to acknowledge it so we can move on. So a lot of people do things like ancestral acknowledgement, which is great, but we're now coming into this more collective field of the other strands of us that are me. And I feel that we're coming to this point to try to zero point it. So we're now in the Skywalker wave spell, which is very much about as above, so below, bringing the structures and the codes in. And we can really ask for knowing as above, so below, who we are in terms of it. It's also it's like bringing a structure and a knowing in. So going, right, I want to understand myself as a conduit this way. It's in many ways the most structured of the signs in the Galactic Mayan calendar. And then we go into a 13-day period of the World Bridger, which is very much about death and dissolving and liberating from things. So there's a possibility that we can all look at what no longer serves, because we're also in a deep eclipse period, a really deep one. We're in an eclipse period where the eclipse, which also sits on solstice, is going to be hitting Mount Kailash. And Mount Kailash is in Tibet, and it's regarded as the Shiva Lingam, the giant penis of the planet. Now, that means that there's a lot of cosmic energy is going to be hitting that area, which is in many, many cosmovisions the most symbolic form of the masculine on the planet in a natural form. And what we're here healing from is where the codings of the last astrological age created an over yang energetic that some people attribute to the man, but it's the masculine or yang aspect in all of us. And this is up for healing and has been. And there's been a lot of time and energy afforded to the feminine part in recent times, but it's very important now that this beautiful cosmic energy can come through to the masculine. So this is a time for us to really let go of the knowing and acknowledging what we had and what we were and who we are, but there's a letting go that can take place. And then we go into the storm wave spell, which is like a huge purge of energy, which is a catalyzing self-generational energy. So it's like creating the electric bolt for aha and speeding up the purification, right? And then we come into the human wave spell, and the human is like us. It's a holograph. It's a microcosm in its own way of spirit, creation, everything wonderful, everything terrible, everything all together. And it's very much a vessel for transmutation and abundance. They call it like the Holy Grail, the human. It can help us to alchemize who we have been, to become something better, to open ourselves, to become the human in its divine form rather than the human in its profane form. And so because of the times we're in, and this need also, the human is really about our free will. And our free will is knowing that we are somebody with our own purpose, our own place. And so many of us feel lost, and so many people feel isolated. And this is a really good time to say, I am this person, and start to begin rebuilding on planet Earth. and to start to bring things together, knowing our place. And I know that a lot of people are starting to really feel that. In the last few days, as we were finishing the last cycle before Skywalker, I had loads of beautiful meetings with brothers and sisters where we were really sharing what we're realizing we are and what we've got to bring to the next chapter. And what I've seen that I'm not seeing before is a real camaraderie where people are really listening for once. And people are not antagonized by thinking, oh, they're going to come into my territory and I've got to defend. And there's just now a clarity, like, yeah, we're doing this. Because everybody's got the nuances coming through. And this is also something that Skywalker can help with, as long as we want to be streamlined into it. And then these releasing processes is getting rid of all the old story, because actually there is a place for all of us. And these nuances were what a lot of us were waiting for, because it's kind of been a bit awkward. It's like, oh, there's 4 of them over there and I don't know where my place is. And now people are like, oh, I do like you, but I've got a bit of a difference and I do this bit and I bridge to you. And that's what's coming in. And that's going to help us with remedy and restoration, okay? Which is where we make the new systems and bring everything together. So that's all pretty cool. And yeah, free will brings freedom. Free will creates the possibility that we do not have to go into lockdown again, have crazy shit stuck in our arms, all of that stuff. Because if you know who you are and where you are, you're actually aligned with natural law and natural time. And that is a higher law than silly made up law, okay? And in the absence of people exercising their free will and their sovereignty, people fill the space by bringing in silly laws. So there's a beauty in that this is here to catalyze us. If we get beyond the trauma story and the freaking out, is like, wow, actually, but I know I'm never going to be vaccinated, or I know this, and I know I'm free to travel, because you know your place. That will get through any border, because it's your soul's conviction that is the highest law. So once you know your place, you know where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do. And you do not create the opportunity for a proxy council and a proxy law-making body because you haven't been free enough. You won't create that with your unconscious, because you are exuding to the cosmos, I am free, I know my place, I will go and do my job. And I'm also going to have loads of fun because I'm free. But you do your job because it's your dharma and you like it, yeah? And you're really good at it. So this is where this wave spell is really important, because when you create that in your field, I know who I am and I am free and I have got my purpose, you send the message to the universe and it creates the freedom, and the other thing will disappear. But if you choose to say, I do not have my power, I don't know who I am, and I don't give a shit about finding out, you probably get all the stuff like the vaccinations and things. And you might want vaccinations, that's no judgment, you do what you want. But I just don't like it, okay? And I've got a story about that, which I will tell sometime. So, freedom is yours to have, but you have to create the opening for it. And this is where acknowledging not just your ancestors, but acknowledging your many multidimensional ways of being. And that's like the person who comes from this place, the person who went to that school there, and all these bits that have made you the flavor of who you are. And if you believe in past lives, the person that has this essence and has now got to reconcile that and know. You see, what happens is people sometimes get polarized with, oh, I did something bad in my past life, and they have shame, or they just like put it away. In a past life, if you believe in these things, the thing is, that's medicine for you to go, right, I really realize why I came to this earth this time, to not do that, because I learned, and this lifetime's about being the change. So this is a really good time to take stock of all those things and all those inklings that you had that were more chaotic, and the good stuff, and the not so good stuff, and why it's making you a better person now, because we all grow from understanding our shadow and understanding why our traumas make us a specialist in something. So, sorry, it clicks off sometimes. So, yeah, so I really encourage you to go into this journey now, because you are doing it for your bloodline, but you're doing it for the collective, because the more and more of us who find our place will create a calming as we zero point our lives and zero point everything. And it's almost like if we get ourselves in the right position, it will help the whole field to calm down, because there's some people who are um, not watching videos like this right now, or have a few layers of healing to do, or have a very adverse situation at the moment and are very traumatized, who won't process this material. So this is for us to find our action stations and to follow our elders and follow those who have been preparing for this, and some of the bridge beings. And by us doing that and finding our places, then the next chapter can begin. And that's what, if we look at it metaphysically or in a fifth dimensional way, that's what coronavirus is here to teach us, is, look at yourself and go inside and create your who you really want to be, and understand what you want, and be deprived of something so that you can actually, with your consciousness, create the new way. So it's a really, really beautiful opportunity we have. And yeah, hopefully we can all weave together. We'll be doing a few clearing sessions and things like that. Just keep in touch with us via the Lotus Consciousness platform and the Lotus Consciousness Facebook group. And yeah, look forward to weaving through these wave spells with you. Take care, everybody. Ciao, ciao.